All right.
Pick one.
So hi, everyone. Welcome to the Renaming Jackson Park. The panelists we're going to introduce ourselves. I really appreciate everyone who's coming. There's still a lot of people starting to join, but as people are joining, we're just going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Amy Woldridge, happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Castro. I will be your chat moderator. Thank you for having me.
And I'm Jim Manning. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, I'm Raquel Williams.
Hey, I'm Mia. Thank you all for coming.
Hi,
I'm AJ.
Go ahead, AJ.
Sorry, I'm Antonio, but I go by AJ.
And I'm Rachel Brockle. Good to see everybody.
I am Jessica Santone. Nice to see you.
Peace be with you all. I'm Rashid Shabazz. Hey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Robbins.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Alexander. Welcome.
Good evening. This is Philly Jones. Welcome.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and people can join us as they come in. So we want to welcome you, and if we could jump to the next slide. So tonight's presentation is all of the panelists you see here on the screen are the folks on the Rename Jackson Park Committee that was appointed through the Recreation and Parks Commission. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to uphold our commitment to make this process as transparent as we possibly can and talk about why the park needs to be renamed. And we'll be talking about the history of both the park, the name, and the renaming effort, and give you background on that, and to educate you about the top 10 listed names that we'll be discussing tonight. So you know a little bit more about those, and also to gather feedback from you. So we'll have polling later and opportunities for you to talk about these 10 names. And then this committee will be making a final list of recommendations to the Recreation and Parks Commission. And then the commission will make a final recommendation in January to City Council. And those will both be public opportunities for input as well. Next slide. So this is our agenda. You'll see a 30-minute presentation about the renaming process and the history, and then we'll have polling and discussion where you can use both the chat, the poll, and you'll be able to verbally give feedback as well. So please know that this is recorded. We will later share it on social media. We are also will have anything you put in the chat, it will be recorded. That may not be posted, but we will have that for the committee will have that for our notes as well. So if you have comments, know that when you post it, we'll be taking that, incorporating that feedback. So you can ask questions and make comments in the chat. We do have a chat moderator, Catherine Castro, who introduced herself earlier. And so please, throughout this, please be respectful of others and their opinions, listen with an open mind, and above all, be brave and let us know what you think.
And I'll do my best to keep up with everybody.
So I'm going to pass this over to Jessica.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to give a super brief history of the park, starting with the land that it's on, and talk a little bit about Andrew Jackson. So the early history of the land in the park. The Ohlone peoples were the original inhabitants of the land and stewards of the land. They were forcibly relocated, enslaved, or killed when colonization began in the late 1700s. Spain gifted a vast tract of coastal East Bay to Luis Peralta, whose family ownership continued under Mexican rule. And part of his son's tract, the Ensenal de San Antonio, was purchased in 1851 and named Alameda in 1853. So this is the history of Alameda. Alfred A. Cohen, an English immigrant and San Francisco financier, bought a land tract in Alameda where he helped build the railroad and ferry, the short-lived resort hotel, Alameda Park Hotel, and a housing development called Alameda Park. In 1867, in Alameda Park, he created the oval shape of what we now call the park as a semi-private garden for residents, modeled after London's garden squares, which were popular at the time. By 1890, residents clamored for improvement, that is landscaping and maintenance of the park, leading to the transfer of the land to the city, and the landscaping similar to what we see today with winding walks, wide lawn, and a variety of trees, including exotic palms that were fashionable at the time in both European and Californian landscaping. In 1895, this site became Alameda's first public park. And although no available documentation states that Alameda Park was the official name, it was often popularly and administratively referred to as such at the time. Next slide. Thanks. So a bit about Andrew Jackson and his legacy. Andrew Jackson, a plantation owner, owned about 300 enslaved people during his lifetime. His career in law and military focused on stealing land from indigenous peoples by defying treaties with Cherokee and Chickasaw peoples using the 1783 Land Grab Act, defeating Muskogee Creek armies, including destroying 15% of their population and demanding surrender of 23 million acres of their land, and leading an aggressive military campaign against the Seminole people. As president, he continued to support white supremacy while also expanding executive power and limiting the role of the federal government through signing the Indian Removal Act, authorizing exchange of tribal lands in the Southeast for land in the West, present Oklahoma, in order to expand the plantation economy in the southern states. Personally participating in that law's implementation, the forced migration and ethnic cleansing genocide of over 60,000 people from Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, and Ponca tribes, an event now commonly referred to as the Trail of Tears. Lowering tariffs to appease enslavers in the South during the nullification crisis, limiting free speech of Northern abolitionists by censoring their mailings, implementing a spoils system with a rotating cabinet of cronies and personal advisors, opposing federal infrastructure projects as government overreach, and weakening the National Bank, which resulted in a major recession in 1837. In 1909, the park was officially named Jackson Park at the same time as 3 other parks were named: Lincoln, McKinley, and Washington. The reason for selecting Jackson's name amongst the 4 presidents is unknown, but possible factors could include praise for his populism, which was valued during the Progressive era, recognition of his role in Western expansion, and or equal representation of both political parties in the selection. Washington was independent, Lincoln and McKinley were Republicans, and Jackson was a Democrat. The context of the naming is important to consider. For example, in the prominent eugenics movement, just a few weeks before the park was named, California passed the Asexualization Act, authorizing forced sterilization of imprisoned and institutionalized people in California, or more seemingly benign things like the City Beautiful movement, which was a landscaping effort to moralize urban spaces through design. And in the same period, ongoing compulsory assimilation of Indigenous youths at Native American boarding schools. Given that context, it's unlikely that Jackson's role in ethnic cleansing would have deterred Alaminans deciding on park names at this time. Pass it over to Mia.
Thanks. So I am going to give you a brief history of what happened once attention started being drawn to Andrew Jackson and more public monuments to white supremacy. So I became involved with the Coalition to Rename Jackson Park in June, which is a community organization. And we built a website, and there is a lot of timeline information on that. So anything that I mention in this brief presentation, you can go see a lot more information about it at renamejacksonpark.wordpress.com. So I'm going to go over some of the important steps that were made, but also a lot of the really important national conversations that were being had at the time that really carried a lot of weight when certain decisions were made. So in 2017, there was a protest in Alameda, and that protest was in response to the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which was a reaction to a Robert E. Lee, who was a Confederate general. A Robert E. Lee statue was going to be removed in Charlottesville. And that created a lot of anger among alt-right groups, so groups that had never before unified in one place, such as self-identified neo-Nazis, Confederate apologists, and racist and KKK members joined together. It was an extremely violent public protest of white supremacy, and that resulted in many counter protests across the country and in Alameda. So you can see on the right here, activists in North Carolina toppled a Confederate statue, and in Alameda, there was a counter protest against the Unite the Right protest that was also protesting and showing solidarity to a local synagogue on Bay Farm that was vandalized. So next slide, please. This created kind of a national conversation that Rashid Shabazz, who's on the renaming committee with us, decided would be a good opportunity to write a letter to the Parks Commission in Alameda to request that they reconsider whether or not Jackson Park really fits with Alameda's current values and fits in with the conversations that are going on nationally, and provided many sources about what Jessica was talking about with what Andrew Jackson's legacy was, and asked them to consider if that was really what Alameda represented. And unfortunately, he received negative pushback from one commissioner in particular who questioned the sources and said it was like opinionated history. So Rashid put together a packet of all of the sources and made a public comment that went over a lot of the international renaming efforts and the local renaming efforts. So this was really, continuing a legacy and a trend that had been happening globally and nationally. And I highly recommend anyone who's interested to go watch that public comment. And he also created a petition which was stuck at 198 signatures for all of 2018. And then again, you can go to the next slide, for 2019 too. So there was kind of this big national conversation, but there wasn't a whole lot of support from the Alameda community to rename, just not a whole lot of awareness. So the commission did began to solicit names for the park, but there was no concrete renaming process that was decided upon. So next slide, please. The next major shift that happened that caused many more Alameda community members to join the coalition to rename Jackson Park, which was the community group, was the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the protests that followed that, and kind of the national consciousness that arose from that. There were many protests in Alameda, and a lot of the petitioning about renaming Jackson Park joined forces with other Black Lives Matter movements in Alameda and other activist groups to draw attention to it. There were also a lot of national conversations happening about Andrew Jackson in particular. For instance, this picture here shows on the right, Andrew Jackson's statue that was being protested against on the lawn of the White House. So the Coalition to Rename Jackson Park created 3 demands, which were to remove the Jackson Park name and the sign, to adopt a timeline for a transparent and inclusive renaming process, and to create a memorial honoring the peoples oppressed by Andrew Jackson. And so next slide. On July 9th, the Recreation and Parks Commission, who were made up of much more enthusiastic and supportive commissioners this time around, decided to vote unanimously to recommend to the City Council to dename the park. And then that unanimously passed also on July 21st. And that was the date also of a sit-in, which is where this picture is from. And this is the picture of the sign being removed. So I hope that this emphasizes that there were a lot of really key stakeholders and key community members who put in a lot of effort, who aren't here on this panel today, but I see a lot of folks in the audience too who are involved. So I will pass it on to Rachel to say thank you to you all.
Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Rachel Brockle. Yeah, definitely this is a very important slide because we know this isn't something that has just happened overnight. There's been work, as said on the slide, in movement for generations before us, and many historical figures that continue to move the work forward. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you for working towards achieving justice. We named some people in this box. It doesn't mean it's everybody, but the Recreation and Parks Department, community leaders, City Council, historians, teachers, volunteers, influential and especially inspiring civilians, cultural and social clubs and groups, and of course, all community members. We know you have all participated, you've all given feedback, and you've all supported. So, we do appreciate you very, very much. And thank you for being here as well. Your feedback means a lot, and it obviously helps us to make very important decisions. So just to move you into the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the renaming process. There at the bottom, you can see our committee meeting, actually. I don't know if that's every single person on the committee, but the majority of our committee, they're meeting on Zoom, and I'll go through a little bit how we kind of got formed. But a renaming committee, which was made up of Alameda residents and commissioners, has been meeting since September, every single Wednesday. We made time to take this as a priority. And while we did these meetings, we established a process and criteria. And if you look over to the right side, you can see the criteria that kind of encompasses what we wanted to accomplish with the park renaming. So we basically said with our criteria, we are seeking a park name that reflects inclusion, diversity, equity of the entire community of Alameda, and which represents social justice, human rights, and/or anti-racism. And if a person's name was to be submitted, the person had to be deceased. In addition, submitted park names were requested to be related to Alameda and/or the greater SF Bay Area. So jumping back over to these bullet points, right? The third one down is gathered name suggestions from the community. So we had our committee split up into 2 subgroups, which basically there was an outreach committee that would go out. They put so much effort in. They not only put up physical flyers around Alameda, they reached out to social and cultural groups in Alameda. They posted on social media. They went crazy to try to reach as many people as they could in the community to gather these name suggestions. And then from there, we did have a vetting committee, which, in between these gathering names and the picking appropriate names, the vetting committee tried to make sure that criteria that we mentioned on the right side here was upheld when some of these names well, all of these names, when they were submitted. But obviously, some of them just didn't meet some of the criteria. So going to the next step of what we're planning to do now is, we have you here, you're going to give us your feedback on these top 10 names that we have. And then eventually what will happen is we will pick appropriate names to recommend to the Recreation Parks Commission starting, in December, which is already next week. So we're moving the ball along. And then the commission will then recommend those names to City Council in January. So our hopes are to have a new name for Jackson Park in 2021. So that's sort of an overview of the renaming process. And then moving on, because all of you probably suspensefully have been waiting for what are those top 10 names that they found going through this criteria, and looking at what the community submitted. So this is in no particular order. Alani, Chochenyo, Fred Korematsu, Peace, Yoshiko Uchida, Mabel Tatum, Mary Reg, Nielsen Tam, Justice, and Alameda. So those were the top 10 park names, and that's our goal today. Our goal today with this meeting is to discuss these top 10 names, not to discuss additional names. So just keep that in mind as you go forward thinking, do I like these names? Do I see any issues with these names? How do I feel about, naming this park? Look at these top 10 names, and this is what we're going to be focusing on. And I think this is where I pass it on over. I forget who's doing this. Amy, are you doing this one?
I am, and I just brought Deja Gold in to speak. She
Panelist.
should be in. She is the language carrier of the Confederated Villages of the Lishan tribe. Deja, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Horshachuhi, Kanakraka Deja, Kanaklishanka. My name is Deja Gold. I am a tribal member for the Confederated Villages of Lishan and a language carrier for the tribe. This is a presentation that has, or a page that has come from the Sogorea Land Trust website, which is also an organization I work for that is located in Oakland. So I am here to speak on behalf of the name Ohlone. Ohlone is a blanket term for the, or an umbrella term for the people that are originally located in this area, the indigenous people. So my tribe, and in this area, which is the Bay, the East Bay, spoke the language of Chochenyo, which is also the other name that you all have suggested here too, is Chochenyo. So Chenyo, like I said, Chochenyo is the original language that we speak in this area, and Ohlone is the term that we call ourselves in this area. If you go down the coast of California, there are actually 8 different types of Ohlone people. And we use the term Ohlone so that we are easily identified, once called Costanoan, but we have moved to Ohlone, and then we are also moving further into calling ourselves our even traditional name, which is what you heard me say earlier, which is Lishan. So I would obviously like the term Ohlone in Alameda, and for that park, Alameda is one of our traditional sites. It is actually a territory called Huchin. Within that territory is called Huchin, and I would be honored to. I would be also like using the original language name Chochenyo for that park as well. So I want to thank you for considering those 2 names. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you for joining us, Deja. So in the interest of time, we're going to move on. I do want to mention too, though, that I spoke to the city manager this morning, and we're going to bring before city council a land acknowledgement. And I'm not going to go into great detail right now about what that is, but we want to extend that. And it basically acknowledges the Lishan Ohlone tribe that was originally that's here before us, and that we are here living and working on their land. So with that, we're going to advance to the next slide. This is the language Chochenyo that Deja was talking about, and then moving on to the next slide. AJ.
Yes, Fred Korematsu. He was a Japanese American from Oakland who fought against internment of other Japanese Americans in the West Coast after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He refused to be interned, went into hiding, but was found and arrested. He fought the internment in court and later was sent to Topaz, Utah, where he lived in a horse stall with a single light bulb for illumination. After he appealed, he was released and continued to fight racism in Utah. In 1983, he went to court again to have his name cleared, and in 1998, President Bill Clinton awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This name fits our criteria because he fought racism and fought for equality when there was none. Peace. Peace is an idea of unity, harmony, and therefore lack of hostility and violence. It's also a lack of war, like the word peacetime, or it can be a mindset that one has. With peace, people can work to improve the quality of life for themselves and others. And with the history of the Alameda Naval Air Station so prominent in the city's legacy, peace would call to mind what those soldiers fought for. And this name fits our criteria because we're looking to replace a name with negative connotation to a positive one, and a name that welcomes cultural and ethnic diversity in our community.
Yoshiko Uchida was an author and children's book illustrator who wrote about her experiences as a Japanese American, including her time in a US concentration camp during World War II. She and her family were forcibly removed from their home in Berkeley to Tenferen Racetrack Relocation Center due to Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066. They were subsequently relocated to Topaz Relocation Center in Utah. Usiko Uchida taught children during internment, and she continued to do so after the war. She wrote many books as well for children. The name fits our criteria because of her commitment to confronting racism, stereotypes, and xenophobia in her writing and teaching.
This is Mabel Tatum. She was the president of the Citizens Committee for Low-Income Housing, which was formed by the Alameda NAACP chapter in 1964. Mabel Tatum lived in the Estuary Housing Project on the Naval Base, which was built during World War II, but remained and housed residents all the way through the Vietnam War, which is why Mrs. Tatum lived there. Her husband was fought in the Vietnam War. The contract between the Alameda Housing Authority and the Navy required the AHA to provide an alternative housing program to residents if they wanted to sell the land. However, the AHA refused to do this and instead began to harass, intimidate, and try to force the residents out of the project so that they could sell the land. In response to this, Mabel Tatum led a 3-day sit-in at the AHA office, organized a school boycott, and led a tent-in at Franklin Park, and a over 200-person protest in the surrounding upper white-class neighborhood where Mayor Godfrey actually lived at the time, to draw attention to the treatment that they were receiving. According to the article that I got this information from, most of the Alameda residents did not even know that the estuary project existed before that protest. So Mabel Tatum fits our criteria because we only have one park in Alameda named after a Black woman. She was also an advocate for social justice and human rights, specifically housing rights, and she is an important figure in Alameda's history that no one knows about.
So Mary Rudge grew up in Texas and Oklahoma and was a single parent of 7 children advocating for children and social change. She traveled the world sharing poetry and became Alameda's poet laureate. She wrote Jack London Neighborhood and several other works. She also started Alameda's poetry contest. This name fits our criteria because only 3 parks in Alameda are named after women. Rudge was an advocate for social justice and she contributed culture, art, and opportunities to Alameda.
A note to the chat, I have to read right now, so if you have a question, I want to ask you to pause, or my colleague Raquel will answer your question. Nelson Tam. Nelson Tam was a Chinese-American administrator with Alameda Unified School District, and the AUSD administrative building is named after him, the Neil Tam Educational Center. He worked for AUSD for 38 years and as a special educational teacher, vice principal, and principal. After retirement, Neil served on the school board. Neil championed diversity, equity, and access in the school district. He served on numerous Alameda boards, Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Club, Alameda Point Collaborative, Alameda Family Services, and the Alameda Food Bank. Neil founded the Multicultural Community Center, an organization of Alameda Asians. He received many awards and was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the city and the county of Alameda. Neil also volunteered to the community and dedicated his life to public education, community services, and support for all those in need. This name fits our criteria because he dedicated his life to inclusion, equity for all students, and fought for social justice.
So the word justice, the actual just like Merriam-Webster definition, is the quality of being just, impartial, or fair, which represents law, righteousness, and overall correctness in the world. And it stems from the Latin word justice, which also means right or law. And it was first known use is in 12th century England. Fun fact about the word, it was also the Merriam-Webster Dictionary 2018 Word of the Year, as it represents social, criminal, and economic reform in the world. This name or word fits our criteria because it represents fairness and so is used to demonstrate progress in society. This value is one to represent respecting others and equality. It is one that has also been connected to multiple social movements such as Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ+ rights. Lastly, the definition of justice evolves with the world as we grow to be a more diverse community throughout the generations.
As you heard earlier this evening from Jessica, when this was Alameda's first and only park from 1895 to 1909, it was referred to as Alameda Park. Those supporting the name Alameda Park feel that this name was taken from the park when it was named for Andrew Jackson, and they would like to see the name Alameda Park restored to it. The Spanish word for Alameda means grove of trees or tree-lined street, which is an apt description of the park. Hopefully the name Alameda will connote inclusion and diversity as we move together into the future.
Thanks, everyone. So moving on, we're going to move on to the discussion portion. Some folks were asking if you'll have a chance to speak, and now is your opportunity. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So these are just some guidelines so we can have a wonderful and respectful conversation to recognize that we're a diverse group of people with a broad range of ideas and perspectives and respect others' opinions. We have many opinions and folks here with us. And if you do disagree, please address the issue, not the person, and speak from the I perspective. And just to encourage everyone to be brave, and we encourage you all to participate, and for everyone to listen with an open mind. Also know that we originally were going to do small breakout groups, but with the limitations of technology, as we're all learning and growing with Zoom, we're doing this discussion style. And note that we do have 37 people attending. Some are already raising their hands, and we will get to you. So please try to limit your comments to about 1 minute so that everyone who wishes to has an opportunity to speak. If you do wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. And also please know that you may post comments in the chat and that chat will be recorded. So you can simply post your comment about how you feel about a name and it will be in the record.
Amy, may I say something?
Yes, please.
That was a lot. As a community, can we please take a deep breath, not into the mic, mute yourself? You guys are not breathing. We need to breathe through this. This is going to be a process. Like Amy said, we have a lot of people to hear from. We're going to do our very best. We want to hear from everybody. Can that happen? Maybe not in this time, but we will do our best to look at the recording and address everyone's concerning question.
Thanks, Rachel. I really appreciate that. So
Catherine.
Sorry, I said Catherine. Catherine, right. Thank you. Can't see everybody's beautiful faces. If we can move to the next slide, please.
Oh, yes.
Thanks, Rachel. So now's when we get to hear from you. I'm going to post a poll, and the question for that poll is, what was there a name that stood out to you of the names? All the names will be listed. Please scroll down to make sure you see all 10 of them. And then while people are doing the poll, we'll start calling on people who've raised their virtual hands, and also feel free to put in the chat. So I'm going to launch the poll. All right, the poll's up, feel free. And I'm going to bring in Robert Ratto to speak. Robert, are you with us? Okay, we're going to come back to Robert. He was there and he wasn't. So I'm going to go to Ron Carlson. Ron, are you with us?
Amy, I'd like to pause. I think
Yes.
there's a different poll needs to be put up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay.
You're right. I put up the wrong poll.
We're all human. Shocking.
Yeah. So thanks very much, Catherine. So this was going to be our last one. This is the demographics. So I'm going to go ahead and simply because we wanted to know who's with us today to help us understand the feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, and I'm going to put up the first question.
And I do see Robert Ratto joined us again. So in case you want to know.
All right. So we're going to do question number 1. All right, question number 1. We'll be coming back to the demographics. Carlson should be with us though. He's in. Are you with us,
Yes.
Ron?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Good. First, I would just like to say the name that George Floyd was mentioned. I don't think that would have anything to do with this, because we're basically talking about slaves, and Andrew Jackson had nothing to do with the death of George Floyd. That just being my point. Moving on, I'd like to know how many of the Oloin names are actually used in building schools, different parks throughout the Bay Area. Do we have a number that we could probably get from the lady that was speaking on this? That would be my question before we would use that name. It seems to me to be used quite a bit around the Bay Area, which is good for them, but I don't know if it's being overused or enough. Mabel Tatum, I am really would vote for her. I think she did a lot and meant a lot to the city of Alameda. The two Japanese names, one was from Oakland and one was from Berkeley. I don't see the real connection to Alameda there. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ron. And then I don't know, Amy. Sorry, I was going to say, did you want to bring in the other speaker?
Yep, I'm going to bring in Robert. Oh, Robert, I'm sorry. That's why you're using an older version of Zoom. So I'm actually not able to bring you in because of that older version. The same thing happens when people are in our public council meeting. So please either upgrade and come back to us, or it's a pretty quick process, or type in the chat. I'm going to bring in Betsy Matheson. Hi, Betsy.
Hi, Amy. Thank you. And thanks to all the speakers. I've learned a lot. I'm a resident of Park Avenue, right next to Jackson Park. And I am in favor of reverting to the historical name of the park, which was Alameda Park. I think it's the simplest, most symbolic way to yank away the name Andrew Jackson and revert to the name that was in place at the time the city of Alameda decided to name all of its parks for presidents. Unlike many of the other facilities in Alameda that need new names because the current names are racist, this park actually has an historic name. And I think that the parks and other facilities like streets that do not have pre-racist names, I think we can put a lot of the resources that have been developed for this project toward renaming those other parks and facilities that have no historic names. So I would like to yank away the name Andrew Jackson and revert to Alameda Park, which was the park's historical name. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. And just really quick, just so everybody know, I'm going to help moderate a little bit on some of these comments. So don't get offended if I cut you off after, if you go over like a minute, minute and a half. It's not because we want to, cut you off. We just have, like we said before, we have a lot of people in the room. We just want to make sure everyone's heard. So far, you guys are doing great. You've all kept it to a minute. So thank you.
And Cheyenne, you're in. If you would please unmute.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Cheyenne, and I'm also a tribal member of the Confederated Villages of Lashawn, and I am pro going for the Loney Park, or Chochenyo, or even Alameda. I like all three of those names, and I think it would be great to have them there, and I do think that being a person of this land before, the slavery and, my people are still here and relevant today, I think this would be a great honor for our people and for the people who live on our land to get to know, us and know the history. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Cheyenne. And Robert, I see you raised your hand again, so we'll try one more time. All right, Robert, you're in. Go ahead and unmute. Robert, we can't hear you. All right, Robert, maybe a third time's a charm.
Try again.
There you are.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say that I think all the names are excellent, but I believe because it was originally Jackson Park, that either the Native American names would be my first choices. And we're changing the park because of Jackson. I mean, the real issue to me is, why was the park named after Jackson to begin with? And the answer would be, I don't know, because of his history with Native Americans more than anything else. And so I think it's, to me, it would make most sense that we would name it either one of the first two Native American names. And I actually sent forth an extra one, but I think somewhere on the sign, so it's clear, whether it be a Loney or whatever, something should be said to the point like, dedicated to the first peoples of Alameda and their vibrant past and present cultures. And then you could put different posts or whatever throughout the park explaining.
I think you
Sorry, I think I accidentally muted you, Robert. You have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you. Sorry, my apologies. There you are.
So did you hear what I said before?
Yes, we heard pretty much all of it.
Okay, that's my 1 minute. So.
All right, sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Catherine, you wanted to say something real quick, and then we have one other person that wants to speak, and then we'll move on to question 2.
I'd love to remind attendees to please honor our community guidelines and to treat each other with respect. We are community members of each other. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. All right, Melody.
Hi, thank you. I like the first 2 names in honor of the indigenous people. I wish that you had taken the poll after we heard all the people's comments, because after hearing a couple comments, I think that I would vote a different way at the end now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you raised that. That's a beautiful segue to our next question. Is we have a second question where you get to think in a different way about all of the names and vote again on the names. Plus, we'll talk later. We have another survey we'll post. So these are the, hopefully you can see all of them. These are the polling of this particular group and the names where they, oh, sorry, share results. There we go. Now you can see it. So these are the results for this first question. So I'll let us breathe and take a moment to look at those, and then we'll start on question number 2. Okay. So then we're going to actually hold on 1 minute. Can I get someone on the panel to help me mark down these? It looks like it keeps saying it's going to clear it out for the next one. So I want to make sure we capture it just in case.
Screen grab instead?
Sure.
Yeah,
anyone who wants to, yep. Can someone do a screen grab?
I closed it already, so someone else can do it.
Okay.
I think you have to do it.
I'm going to share results.
Okay, yeah, I can do it now. Okay, screen share and print screen. Okay, I've got it.
We're good? Okay,
yep.
Great. See, this is the first one, sorry. I'm new to polls. So I'm trying to figure out how to get to poll number 2. Hold on, here we go. All right, so the next question is, what name represents the kind of place you want Alameda to be?
So don't forget to scroll down. Scroll down on this one.
Yep. Please scroll down so you can see all 10 of them. It's the same 10 names. And then, as before, if you have any other comments you'd like to add, I don't see anyone with their hand raised right now, but you may make a comment or put something in the chat. All right, it looks like everyone who wanted to vote has so far. And in terms of scrolling down, sometimes if you either use the roller on your mouse or there's a little bar on the side that you can grab to click and pull it down. But you can also type it in the chat. And I don't see anyone with their hands raised, so we're going to close the poll in just a minute and show the results. And Rachel, if you could do another screen grab.
Okay.
Thank you.
It looks like there is someone with their hand raised. Maybe.
Oh, did they just raise it? There we go. All right.
And let me know when you do the poll share so I know when to click on it.
Will do. All right, Jay.
Yeah, hi. I don't see that any of these names have anything to do with indicating the kind of place we want Alameda to be. They're very deserving names, but I don't see how any of them speak to what we want Alameda to be. That's my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Robert.
Well, I would tend to disagree. The Native American names, actually, most of those names are speaking to justice issues. And to me, that's what we want Alameda to be, a place of justice and peace. I mean, almost every name there is absolutely speaking to peace, to peace and justice and equality of all peoples. And if that's not where we're headed, I'm not sure what we're doing here. I mean, so I disagree with what he said.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling and post.
Okay, I see it. Give me one moment. Okay, it's been captured.
And is there any, before we move on to the next one, is there anything anyone, panelists or want to share? Okay. Then we have a third question, and this, we don't have a poll on this because it's a really open-ended question, but what are the strengths and weaknesses of each name, or just of if you want to pick a couple of names or particular name that you'd like to speak about or post in the chat about?
Amy, may I create some intentional space?
Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. So this is the opportunity for people who may need more time to think about the question. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to count to 8 in my head, and we'll hold silence for you to think and process. And then by the time I hit 8, I'm hoping that people that are typically quiet are feeling brave enough to speak. So here I go. 1, 2.
Great, thank you for that space, Catherine. So one person, Jay.
Hi. If our main purpose is to counter Jackson's Trail of Tears, then I think we should pick one of the Native American names. And in this regard, I would like to hear from the representatives of the tribe to tell us which one they would prefer. Ohlone is more generic. Chochenyo maybe refers just to the Alameda tribe, and that would be fine with me. And if we're not going to pick one of these two names, I would rather go to something completely neutral like Alameda Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, Eric. Eric, if you could unmute, there you go.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for mentioning the incident at Temple Israel. I appreciate that as part of the history. The indigenous names, Ohlone and Chochenyo, for me, the fact that the Ohlone people are asking us to name it, that is pretty much game, set, and match. That's, I don't think we have the right to refuse a request like that. I would prefer Chochenyo because I think it raises the question. Ohlone people will recognize and not ask anything more. Chochenyo might raise a conversation, a question that would be very productive. I believe strongly that Japanese Americans in Alameda need to be recognized. I didn't see in the presentation that these two had a particular connection to Alameda. So I would very much like a Japanese Alamedan to be recognized somewhere. Same with the Filipino, very, very important in Alameda history. Nelson Tam, very important figure, already has something named after him. And Mabel Tatum, absolutely, positively. If it weren't for my first statement, that would be where I would go in an instant. And for me, the others are too generic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate your comments.
Can I interject? Regarding Yoshiko Uchida, I should have included the fact that although she primarily lived in Berkeley, she was born in Alameda, actually. So she does have a connection, although perhaps not a strong one.
All right, I have one more hand, Robert.
I just want to say I agree completely with Jay and Eric, everything they said.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, so let's do the quick poll. My apologies, we're going to do it again, but just the demographics, we would love to know who we are, and if you're comfortable sharing that, I'm going to relaunch to that.
The intention is to help us assess if we've captured enough people in the community to represent this decision.
And again, please scroll down. There's 3 questions within the demographics: race, ethnicity, age, and where you live on the island, or if you live on the island. Okay, we'll give it just few more, just 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll close this and move to the end of our presentation. While we're doing that, Ron Carlson's raised his hand, so I'm going to bring you in.
I'd just like to say I'd like to thank all the people for the hard work that they did on this commission and continue to do. This is no easy task, and I think they should be recognized for all the hard work that they've put in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, for the thank yous. I'm sure Amy was going to say the same thing. We appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much. I also want to extend my very heartfelt gratitude to everyone on this committee. It's been an amazing journey with this group of people, and everyone's put in a lot of work and a lot of thoughtful intention. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share the result. Share the results.
Okay, give me a minute with this one because there's a couple sections I'm going to have to screenshot.
Sure.
No, just 2, not too bad. Okay, I've got it.
Okay. We have one more question from Robert, or comment. Robert, you in? You had your hand raised?
Yes. No, I just wanted to second. I found this to be very well prepared, very interesting, and I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready to move on to the last slide.
See if it wants to cooperate with me here. Here we go.
So we very much want to appreciate everyone who put your thoughts in the chat and who spoke and who listened and participated. This poll is going to be available as of tomorrow morning. This is a SurveyMonkey poll that has the same questions. We'll be compiling the data from both. So please feel free to share with everyone and all who couldn't attend tonight. And it'll be available at alamedaca.gov/recreation. There's an icon on the side that says rename Jackson Park, and all of the information will be there. The survey, will post the video of tonight's forum, and plus we'll have a more detailed document of all of the names from the research that folks on this committee put into those names. And we really encourage all of you to do your own research on the names too. And if anything else comes to mind, please feel free to send my department an email or fill out the Survey Monkey again. So thank you so much. Is there anything anyone from the committee would like to add?
Yes, ma'am. Guest, if you saw the poll and you're wondering like, where are my people at? Help us out with outreach, share that link with more folks. I am Panamanian. If there's another Panamanian on this island, help me get it to that person, please. We would really love that support and effort.
Yeah, I have a question. I just want to see peace with you. Can we share the results from the second and/or the third poll to just see who we are, and as well as what people thought about who we want to be?
I can share, Rashid, honestly, I can share the demographics, but the number two, because I'm new, this first time I've done polling, it seems to have cleared out the other two, which is why we were as I went through. So that's why we were having, Rachel was screen sharing them. So what we could do is what we will do is post those screen shares. Here, I'll share the number three, the demographics. And we'll post the poll results on the website as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just share one thing. So first, I'm grateful for being a part of this process and for folks for being engaged, being present. Someone mentioned earlier they didn't see a connection between the murder of George Floyd and Andrew Jackson. And I just want to make just two connections. I think Amelia was speaking about the context. So I think there's maybe an immediate connection where George Floyd allegedly used the counterfeit $20 bill. And if you recall who's currently on the $20 bill instead of Harriet Tubman, that could be one loose connection. But I think the fact that, you know, there were less than 200 signatures, and then shortly after his murder and the number of protests, over 1,000 people signed the petition. And so I think that context is the momentum that led people to look back at this monument and decided it needed to come down. So thank you all for signing it. And again, I'm grateful to be a part of this process.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
The only thing I was going to just add really quick, because I had to learn this being a professor, to screenshot things is very handy. So for those of you using Windows, which I do, there's a lower left button that looks like a window. You press that, and then in the upper top right of your keyboard, there's a print screen button. If you press those at the same time, it will screenshot this page. As Amy said, this is probably going to be posted, you know, in another forum, but you know, in case you wanted this specific page to share with others. And then, is anyone a Mac user who knows how to do that one? I think that one's easier. There's like one button to push, I think, right?
Mac users can press Command-Shift-3 for entire screen and Command-Shift-4, and you'll be able to select the part of the screen that you want to capture.
So Command-Shift-3 and Command-Shift-4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was easier. It's same thing. You have to push multiple buttons at the same time. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say, just in case folks are worried about losing this link. You know, just make sure that you have that information to share with others.
And if you lose it too, you can just Google Alameda Recreation and that'll pull you to this website, and then you can find it from there. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you all the committee for everything, all of your hard work, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.